Welcome back to Seeking True Love. Today, I'm here with Kari Azuma. We are going to be talking about how you can create inner safety in your nervous system. This is very important for, anybody, but I know, Kari, you especially work with women. And for people who are highly sensitive, this is so key because we really need that toolbox so that we don't go into overwhelm. Kari, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, my pleasure. So happy to be here.
Welcome to Seeking True Love, dating advice for highly sensitive, heart-led women. If you're a deeply feeling, intuitive woman who longs for a relationship that meets you on every emotional level, you're in the right place. This podcast is for women who lead with their hearts and who refuse to settle for surface-level dating or emotionally unavailable partners. Here, you'll get practical dating guidance made for HSPs, support for the challenges sensitive women face, tools to stay grounded without abandoning your needs, and expert conversation about what true love really is and how to call it in for yourself. Because your love story should be extraordinary.
You're just right for me, and I'm just right for you. And I'll take your heart and squeeze so softly, so sweetly, forever love.
Kari Azuma guides women through modern initiations that awaken their instinctual power so they can lead themselves and life from strength, not survival. Kari's work addresses what lies at the root of every choice that we make, the nervous system. By combining somatic leadership practices with deep nervous system rewiring, Kari helps women excavate layers of survival patterns and build profound safety in their bodies. This foundation allows them to move through their days with confidence, make aligned decisions, and create lives that feel both accomplished and deeply satisfying. Trained under master coaches including Julio Ola, Scott Cody, and alongside Preston Smiles and Alexi Panos, Kari brings together nature connection work, breath work, ritual, intuitive subconscious work, and somatic practices. Kari has guided executives, entrepreneurs, mothers, and wellness leaders, and facilitated rites of passage for those navigating major life transitions. Kari's greatest teachers have been her two children and nearly a decade with the Native American Church, which continues to shape how she walks this path. One thing that I want to add to that is that I've known Kari for a long time, and Kari introduced me to a group of people that do wilderness rites of passage fasting, which was a very transformational experience for me. We were out in the woods solo. You'll go out with a group of women, and then each woman finds her own place in the woods. So there's some safety. I found it to be the right amount of safety and the right amount of challenge in the sense that you have a whistle, you have your person that each day you walk to a meeting place that you've agreed on in the woods where one person puts a stone on top of a stone and then the other person puts the stone off the stone. So you know that each other are alive without having any kind of contact. And it was an incredibly beautiful experience for me. And it was one of the ways that I started to awaken my own sensitivity because being out in nature and being away from the internet, not that I would want to live there all the time, but it was really great to see what does my nervous system do when I'm out in the wild. And you have no clocks, you have no electronics. So the only way you know what time of day it is you're looking at the sun. I was so amazed to find just how quickly my body tuned into nature.
Yeah.
I knew what time it was without knowing what time it was. I knew where to go, where not to go. I never really encountered wild animals, but I had this sense of, I'm not going to go hike over there. I feel like there might be wild animals over there. And I'm a city girl, and I haven't spent a lot of time in the woods, and I'd never backpacked by myself before. And it was great. It was a great experience for me to see just how much innate wisdom was in my body that I thought, I know this stuff. It's in my DNA. That was very empowering. So I wanted to share that personal experience as well, because it was where I started to see the beauty of the highly sensitive person and where high sensitivity might have been valued in more tribal cultures or cultures that are more connected to nature, more primitive cultures. So anyway, Kara, I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Completely forgot that you fasted. My gosh. Like,
I know 10 years
totally
ago.
forgot. Yeah, no, it's been a while, but it's important because it stays with you for so long. But yeah, I mean, even when you were just talking about the experience, when you were saying you've never experienced connecting to nature that fast, I mean, that experience is like a complete and total rewilding of oneself. And that's really my experience of having gone out myself, but also having guided women in that experience. I just actually took my first group back out after 9 years of not guiding. I took a group out this last summer, and it was actually my first time lead guiding. It was very challenging. It was a great initiation for me, but it was wonderful. And the women, without fail, people get really caught on the word fast. They're like, well, what's the, because we call it a vision fast, because it's not actually a traditional vision quest. That's a Native American practice that is very specific. Ancestors for centuries and eons have been doing wilderness rites of passage in different ways, in nature. But this particular one, it's like we call it a vision fast, but it's a fast from everything. It's a fast from technology. It's a fast from having to meet other people's needs. It's a fast from food. It's a fast from, it's a fast from all of the things that we are accustomed to on a daily basis to welcome in that rewilding process. So to date, I would say it's still the most embodied experience of self-trust I've ever encountered. And also the largest experience of building in my own dialogue with nature, which really we are nature, but we consider ourselves so separate from it. We've really separated ourselves from it. So it's really a homecoming too, into what feels natural, normal. You can hear yourself out there. You can track your rhythms. You can hear your own wisdom. It's so powerful. There's no coaching that I've ever done that could touch that, even though I really believe strongly in how beautiful the nervous system coaching is. It's like, that's why I've come back to it, because I was like, this is the ultimate. I want to take women back out for this experience. And I only do it once a year, so it's hard. I mean, I wish I could do it more, but yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I remember too that the group that I did it through, which is, I know it was a group that you introduced me to. They prepare you for 6 months of different types of rites of passage. And there were different things like giving gifts and giving away charity. So you don't pay them any money, but you need to give a certain amount in charity or gifts. And I ended up making artwork for everybody as one of the ways to do that. And so it's not like you sign up and then that weekend you're going to the mountain. It's you are prepared.
Yeah.
And they prepare you physically and they prepare you psychologically.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful for adults who have not had a rite of passage or feel like they need one.
It is. And not everybody does it that way. Kent Pierce, who was the founder of the Condor clan, Kent and Farian Pierce, he really had a vision, because his mentors were Stephen and Meredith Foster, who run the School of Lost Borders, who do fasts, but they do fasts as a one-off, right? They don't do the severance period, which is the preparation beforehand, and they don't do the incorporation in the same way. So I actually had that's the way I'm doing it. I'm doing the Condor model because I love it. I think it's so important. I actually do 6 months of prep also, and I also do 3 months of incorporating. I actually have a call today to do an incorporation call with my group. Yeah, that's the call I have after this. So that has been, a really important for me. I think it is important. I mean, most of the women I went with were city people. Many of them hadn't camped. That's another reason it was challenging. But it was amazing because they had enough to go out there and know that they were held. So yeah, I think that the way that was done is just brilliant. And there are people that you just go out and fast and you just do it. And that has, that has its own mystical magic too. And they do it for a longer period of time. Condor does a shorter time out on the threshold of the mountain. But anyway, I do think it is one of the most beautiful things for your nervous system, because one of the greatest regulation tools in the world, if you really just want to know the best one that exists, is nature. And we literally don't access it. People will be doing breath work in their house, totally stressed out. And I'm just like, go outside. But
what does
not
it
everyone has
touch
the
your
competency, not everyone has the competency to actually know how to commune with the outside.
That's true. There's a reason why I think that's becoming a meme. And it's like, you've been online too long. Go touch grass. Have you heard that?
No, but I'm sure I've seen it somewhere.
I take that literally now, because when I'm feeling stressed out, I will go barefoot onto some grass.
Yeah.
It's one of the tools. And nature is so important for highly sensitive people in particular. This is actually something that I was just hearing about. I was on a call with a woman who specializes in doing therapy for highly sensitive people. And she was doing a topic on gratitude. And she said she had a list of things that you could find gratitude for. And one of the things on there was find some gratitude for nature and the natural world. And she made a comment like, even if you're really stressed out and you're really overwhelmed and you're really upset with everything else that's going on in your life, you can find something in the natural world to be grateful for. And that really stood out to me as important because what you're saying, that this is one of our best regulation tools. So we're already getting into the tool. I want to take a step back and just talk about how you even got into doing this work with inner safety and nervous system and why inner safety is so important.
Yeah, I love that question because it is important. Well, I think when I met you, I was coaching mothers. Well, actually, no, I met you even before that. It's kind of
I
crazy.
know. I've seen you go through lots of iterations.
You have. You were right there at the beginning when I was coaching embodied leadership, which is my beginnings. I was a student of Scott Cody, who had an institute called the Institute for Embodied Wisdom. He passed away a couple of years ago. I'm really sad about that. But he had a legacy of just beautiful leadership work that was all about how to be in the body, how the body, your presence denotes how you lead in life and how you enroll people in your vision. So that's really where I started. And I loved that work, ontology, somatics, it was before somatics were even popular. And then after I had my son, I kind of went down a really big spiral because I had a really tough birth, postpartum depression, and anxiety for years. And I started working with mothers only in leadership based on that experience. But I noticed as I was coaching them, they were getting success and their goals were getting accomplished. They were moving forward in life, which is what coaching sort of is for, life coaching, I would say. But they were still in some way seeming overwhelmed, anxious, stressed. They were overriding themselves to get to these places. And I was even experiencing that. And so I actually kind of shut my business down. It was during COVID and it worked out anyway because I became daycare for my kids. And my husband was moving into his season of coaching. So I just kind of took a break. And when I was home with my kids, which was actually my greatest edge, was not be working, because that was actually a flight response that I had from my kids, which is in your nervous system, fight, flight, fawn, freeze. You might have heard those terms. That was the way that I was escaping what was hard, was with work. And so when I didn't have that, I was faced head on with what was dysregulating me on a daily basis, which was really having to be a full-time mom. And because of the trauma of the birth, the entrance into motherhood I had, that was a hard area for me. It's still one of the stickiest for me, even though I love being a mom. I love my kids. And so once I started coming back into coaching, I started realizing it's really the nervous system. I feel like the nervous system is what I've been skipping. And I happened to find this amazing mentor who I really love, Alicia Tischel, and she had a particular soup of how she taught nervous system work. And it started becoming really popular at that time. You know how it's blown up.
Yeah.
But she was really on the forefront of it, kind of before it all got popular. Kimberly Ann Johnson at that time, another person I love, she was kind of rising up to this conversation as well. So I started reading her books. I started training with Alicia and getting coached in this work. And it's called deep root nervous system work. So it's not just putting on the Band-Aids of regulation. It's really about going into the brain pathways, the ways that we trained ourselves on how to stay safe, which is literally the most, if I can say one thing on this podcast, it's the most important part of how to really understand working with your nervous system, is you really have to get to the root of learning about yourself. How did I learn how to stay safe? How did I learn how to cope? And largely those pathways are set from 0 to 7 years old. Doesn't mean it's the only time, but largely that's where they're absorbed the most because we're not born with a sense of safety. It's all interpreted and it's all subjective. One person's safety map is not the same as anyone else's. So a big part of my work is actually teaching women about their own safety map. It's so wonderful to be guided through that because especially for sensitive people, then they understand, oh, this is how I learned how to cope. This is why I do this thing. This is why I default into just collapsing or flooding my system with emotion when things get overwhelming. I get it. And that getting it is so empowering because then it's like, okay, now I can intervene. What traditional coaching does that I don't do anymore, sometimes, I'm not saying everyone does this, is usually they're overriding those cues to force them into new action.
Yeah, push past your comfort zone.
Yeah, and which I did that for years as a coach. I'll admit it. That's how I was trained in certain things. Those were sort of the mentors I had early on. Not so much Scott, but other people. The whole industry really was about that. And it's not bad. It's just that if people aren't ready for that particular push at that moment, they're going to abandon themselves to move forward versus integrating their fears, their safety, and what's actually needed for them to move from center into that action. And so that's also what I'm coaching women on. I will be totally biased and just say this. It is the most powerful work I've ever done. And I think it's the most effective work for women because one of the things we're constantly constantly having to grapple with is safety, period,
Yes.
as women, right? And then especially sensitive women and women who are really prone to like their cycle time, or women who are neurodivergent. You know, there's just all of these ways in which we're already scared to walk through a parking lot by ourselves at night in a way that men aren't, right? It's like we just have to deal
Right.
with even those little tiny things all the time. But our greatest concern a lot of the time gets taken up with just how are we staying safe? Are we okay? Am I going to be all right?
Yeah, and I would add to that because you and I are both moms. When you become a mom, now you have that wired in for your kids too. I have to keep myself safe and I have to keep my kids safe.
Yes. Which I think is why, you know, I had this explained to me when I did my own nervous system work. I did it for a year straight, and then I trained in it for a year straight right after. So it was like double whammy. Is just being explained that when I had my son and when I went through that trauma of that birth, and that so much of how I learned how to stay safe was through control. That was the baseline in my household. Here's how we control it. Here's what we plan for it. Here's how we, you know, here's how we can make a problem so we can fix it. You know? So when my
Here's
body
how we
went
can
in,
make a problem.
yeah, that's what control people love to do. Let's get
Yes,
worried
I
or
know,
make
I'm
a
familiar.
problem so we can fix it. And then we get into fixed energy, which is also a whole thing. But
Yeah.
but when I had my son and my body was in labor, and I was not expecting how intense it was going to be, how much pain I was going to feel, I just had this expectation I was going to have this easy orgasmic birth, because that's what all the birth classes were telling me of the natural birth world. And I was so shocked by how uncomfortable I was in my body, how unready I was, how unprepared I felt. And I just lost total control in that moment. And I think what was explained to me is in that moment, my synapses, all my brain synapses just snapped, because it was like, I can't control this. I'm out of here. So I left my body. I just abandoned. I took off, which is really what I did. I remember being in labor and saying, I wish I was my husband right now. I want to be my midwife. I don't want to be me. I'm going to leave. I remember all of that. And so it took a long time to regain trust just in life, to not. That's why I was so anxious, because I couldn't even trust life. It's almost like everything that I knew about safety collapsed and I had to rebuild it. But I was doing it through fear instead of actually, I didn't have this work at that time, you know. I had to do it all retroactively. But if I had, I feel like I could have integrated that experience so much better and got out of anxiety so much quicker. Because I would say the anxiety I had for my birth lasted a good 6 years after. It
Wow.
just stayed in my body. And I didn't trust my body anymore after birth. There was a lot of things that kind of broke and cracked in my safety system that had been there previously, but they had been held up by control. So it was cool kind of that they broke down, because then when I found the nervous system work, I was able to rebuild a lot of those things in a more integrated and stable way that's sustaining, not working from fear and control, but actually feeling like, okay, here's how I do this, and here's how I can prepare if it doesn't go my way, which is a huge piece of the safety, being ready for life, building resilience. And just on that note, and I'll kind of pause here, is the thing I've really been sitting with in the last year in my own study is how working with your nervous system actually builds more resilience. At first, it's about the softening and the self-forgiving and being more self-compassionate, because we're so hard on ourselves usually, as women, especially the ideal woman always in our head. But then it's like, how do we build a body that can adapt more, pivot more, take more risks, be courageous, lead in these powerful ways in our life without feeling like we have to brace or contract or go hard, but just actually be able to do the thing and say, okay, I can prepare for what life's going to bring me, and I'm not going to collapse. I'm not going to burn out. You know, all the things that we run into when our nervous system is under attack. So yeah, resilience is for me the best result of working with your nervous system.
There's so much gold in what you just said there. And I want to talk about, there's so many things I want to talk about with it. One thing I wanted to talk about was because you and I had a similar experience, I think, with the birth of our first kid, because we've been exposed to this work for so long and we're in this world. I think you and I probably had very similar knowledge and expectation of, I'm going to have this natural orgasmic birth, and then that's not what happened. Reconciling that, because I know that there can be something very disempowering in that moment when you have an expectation of, I'm going to have this one experience, and then your nervous system in real time is having a different experience.
Yes.
And your body is doing something different. I think it's disempowering to set women up to expect pain in childbirth. It can be disempowering in another way to say, oh, you can have this orgasmic experience, and then there's this implication of, and if that's not what happened to you, you did it wrong.
Right.
Right. You weren't feminine enough. You didn't surrender enough to whatever. And I know
Right.
I've dealt with a lot of those judgments, and especially in being highly sensitive, that was something that I really had to go, you know what? I don't think that my sensitivity to things is indicative of a lack of surrender the way that I thought it was. It's not to say that I didn't have learning curve and surrender. I did and still do. And I had to learn to make that distinction of, you know what, this is going to be painful in this way, or this is the experience that's happening. And surrender is to surrender to the real experience.
Yeah.
So I love that you went through that, because it sounds like you moved from a place of expectation on what was supposed to happen to having an experience that was different, and dealing with that, and then ultimately finding peace with it through a much deeper level of work than what you had been doing before.
Yeah. I mean, and that level of work came, gosh, 6 to 7 years later, I mean, I remember just my other friends having kids naturally and just crying every time they gave birth by myself quietly. I wouldn't cry in front of
Aw.
them, but I would just be like, oh my God. Just that it was just so deep of that sense of failure. And, and my friends, they had some badass births. One of my friends just accidentally birthed her baby, she's incredible.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean accidentally?
Her midwife didn't come in time, and she just was, I guess I'm just going to have this baby without her. She lives in the mountains.
Wow.
So yeah, it was epic. But yeah, it's every time I was just, because I did feel less than. I did feel, there was something that I couldn't accomplish, right? So yes, I totally understand what you're saying about that feeling of that judgment that comes forward. But one thing that was really powerful when I started healing this with the nervous system approach was more around the visitations I would give myself of that time of who I was. And really what we want to study when we're looking at sort of these older traumas is just looking at how we coped. So a lot of how I coped was trying to grasp back into control, to find normalcy, get over it, move forward, be grateful, just do all these things that got me out of the hole. And the thing that I had skipped at that time was that I actually really needed to affirm more of what was happening as it was, how I felt, acknowledging the massive change. I mean, I literally wanted to punch people in the face when they were like, well, you have a healthy baby and that's all that matters. And I was just like, really? Is that all that matters? That I'm a shell of a person right now? And that's got to be okay because my baby's fine, I get the premise, but no. So when I started doing the nervous system work, a lot of the time it was about going back and finding one image of myself of that time. And I always imagined the same thing was me in this rocking chair that I had in the corner of my room, just rocking back and forth, kind of looking listlessly off into space, just feeling so scared. Like, why are people leaving me with this baby? I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously, I'm a failure. I had such a bad opinion of myself at that time that it was affecting how I was even seeing my baby was okay. So I would go back and I would look at that time because I was coping by wanting to override it, by wanting to abandon who I was being. I don't like this version of myself. She's disempowered. She seems weak to me. I don't like being this person. I kind of hated being that person. So I would go back and I would sit with myself in that memory. I just close my eyes and I would sit and imagine myself. I would look at my face, my hair, my clothes, everything. I just imagine a visual of, or if you're not a visual person, you can do it in a sentient way, how I would feel, like how it felt to be in that body. And I would just say, this is really hard. This is really, really hard. It's not okay that the birth happened this way. It is what it is. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't feel awful and you're scared. And I would just tell her, yes, I see you. I know how you feel. Because what the nervous system is doing when it's freaking out is it's knocking on our door basically and saying, hey, I'm not okay. There's threat here. We're not safe. And if we don't start answering those knocks, if we just say, shh, we're okay. We're going to move on. We need to take care of this baby. Shh, like we got to. And sometimes you have to. I had to take care of that baby. I didn't have the resources at that time to I couldn't work. So it was hard. I had to just deal with what I was dealing with without the normal kind of resources I would have, coaching or whatever, And even all my tools I had as a coach weren't working at the time. It was like nothing could get me past with tools. And what I was missing at that time was affirming, just saying that was really hard. That was an acceptable birth. That, just saying the things that were true. And so I had to do that retroactively to actually start answering the stress signals that my body still had 6 years later that was saying, this wasn't okay. This wasn't okay. And I had to go back and say, you're right. It wasn't okay. And then the stress signal goes, oh, thank you. I'm going to stop
The
knocking so loud.
acknowledgement.
Affirming the experience is literally one of the best regulation tools on the planet. It's so simple. It's so
I
simple,
was
but
gonna
it's
say,
huge.
yeah, what you're saying is so beautiful, and it's a practice that I've adopted as well, is that acknowledgement. I want to speak to that in the context of those of us who are highly sensitive. You are sharing a particular story of where you needed to do it. And I want to take that one step further. I think this acknowledgement needs to happen anytime you get stressed out. And one of the things that highly sensitive people will do is they will judge what's stressing them out because it's whatever judgment is. It's a small thing. But I've seen this in my partner. I've done this in myself of like, I shouldn't be sensitive to that, or that shouldn't be a big deal. And you said this story about how people would say, well, at least you have a healthy baby. And that was a way to dismiss what you went through.
Yeah.
You can be grateful for the health of your baby and also acknowledge that that was a very stressful situation for your nervous system. I would take that a step further for anyone who has a stress. It was stressful that the bus was late. It was stressful that there was traffic. It was stressful that, my partner, he moved here recently. His dishwasher in his new apartment doesn't have, he's going to be like, I can't believe you're telling this story. His dishwasher in this new apartment doesn't have a timestamp on it to tell you when the dishes are done the way his old dishwasher does. And it drives him crazy. And then he'll say, I know that's so stupid to be stressed out by a dishwasher. And I'm like, no, it's not. That is really annoying, actually, to not have a timestamp to tell you when your dishes are done. That would annoy me too. But I see that pattern in that.
Yeah.
And of just, it's that I shouldn't be sensitive to this. I shouldn't be stressed out by this.
Right.
And that's exactly when you start to add the layers. And like you said, one of the best regulation tools can just be, yeah, that is really annoying.
Yeah.
To not know when your dishes are going to be done.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the coolest ways I learned this tool was when I was doing the work on my own nervous system to begin with. I'm always doing work on my nervous system, just to be clear, but this is when I went through the deep dive where I first did a big overhaul. And my mentor had told me, when your son is throwing a tantrum, which was a really hard place for me I would just want to leave. I would want to just get out of the room. I had a flight response with that. And so when he would do that, she said, your one job is to stay when he's doing that. I know it's going to be hard, but your job is just to stay, not force your body and just say like, stay. But what you're going to say to yourself while you're staying is, this is so hard. I don't want to be here. I have no idea how to help him. This makes me crazy. Anything you're feeling in that moment, just say it to yourself, affirm it, but stay. And oh my God, that produced miracles. Honestly, I was so much better. Like, after doing that practice for a while, I was so much better at just staying present with him. And it was a big learning because, unfortunately, because of our beginning with me and my son, it was like there were so many ways I would get agitated and feel like I can't be present, but it was a pathway into starting to build that presence. And now I can be with him so easily. I don't want to say easily all the time, but it's just a lot easier because I gave myself that permission to hate it. It sounds horrible. But it's, in that moment, it's not me hating it. It's not me hating my son. It's not like me not wanting to be a mom. It's me feeling scared and not wanting to stay in one place when I feel scared. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. It can work for any stress. And whenever my clients text me something or leave me a voice note in Telegram, when I do one-on-one with people, we have real-time coaching on Telegram. They'll share something and I might have a million ways to coach them. But the first thing I'll say is, that sounds really, really hard. That experience sounds incredibly frustrating. I'm sorry I had experienced that. Or just something that first tells them, yeah, I get why you're feeling stressed in this moment. I get why you're dysregulated. Makes sense. And then that way they have that one moment to quiet and feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not over, and then they can hear a little bit better. They can be more compassionate to themselves while they're listening to what could be possible versus, okay, what do I do because I'm a mess? And so I'm just going to hide my mess and put it under the carpet with a fix. Give me the fix. And I actually have a whole video for my clients when they sign up with me about how we're not going to be in fixed energy. because it is incredibly dysregulating to want to just fix yourself. It's kind of a catch-22, but it's part of how they get out of the learning. They're not coachable when they want to fix, when they want to have the thing or get to the place, or because that is an external marker of am I okay versus like, no, we're going to have am I okay come from you, from your center, from you knowing that, not if something got accomplished, not if your business got bigger, not if someone's being nice to you again. It's going to come from you knowing the okayness as a felt sense in your body, which is why, like, I obviously have somatics involved in this because you can't do nervous system work without your body because our body is the nervous system. So yeah, so it's a beautiful, complicated web, but God, I just love diving into different nervous systems. It's so interesting and fun.
Yeah. Okay, we've talked about 2 tools so far, and I want to talk about any other tools. The 2 tools we've talked about so far are getting into nature and the acknowledgement. Are there other tools that you would want to talk about right now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tools. I don't want to poo-poo like the regulation tools that exist, like breath work and cold plunging, things like that. You know, it's like those things all work. I just tried to tell people, don't just use those as Band-Aids for your nervous system because you are not going to close the stress loop. We're actually meant to have stress in our body. Our nervous system is designed to help us survive, right? So this is just a very simple thing to understand, but it's important. We actually need those stressors, but some of them are outdated. Some of them are defaulting from past traumas. Some of them are making us do things that are not in alignment with who we are anymore. So sussing out, okay, what are the things that I'm defaulting because this reminds me of something old? And what are the things that I'm actually in danger with, right? What's the actual tiger in the room? Because the tiger's not actually here for some of these things. And so when we're looking at these stress loops, what we want to figure out is how to close them. You do want to close the stress loops, but if you're just kind of Band-Aiding and saying like, I'm going to close the stress loop by putting breath on top of it, and then I'm just going to abandon the rest of it. There's actually this beautiful, if you want a tool, there's a beautiful practice that I adopted from Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer, and they do mindful self-compassion. And I took this fantastic short course with my friend Emily White, who teaches their work. And their work with mindful self-compassion is those are some amazing tools for the nervous system because it takes so much compassion to actually talk to your nervous system. And one of their tools that they did was called soften, soothe, and allow. So looking at what is the fear in this moment and then creating a shape with that fear. So maybe it feels like a triangle or a square, something in your body. And as you're breathing, you're softening the edges. So let's just say you're pissed off at your dad for something and your dad triggers you. And so you feel like a triangle in your belly. And that's the image you come up with because that's where you usually go where the contraction is in your body. Then you think about that triangle, and as you breathe, you imagine with every breath that the edges of that triangle aren't as sharp anymore. They're softening with every breath. And then you soothe. So you find a place on your body. This is a wonderful way to regulate yourself is as that softening in your breathing, you just soothe yourself. So you can put your face in your hands, or you can stroke your arm or stroke your leg, or just hug yourself. Something to let yourself know that you have soothing, loving touch for yourself. And then allow, which is, again, the acknowledgement. It's okay that I'm feeling this way. Like, it's okay. You know, it's yes, my dad's triggering me. And they use something called, what is it called? Common humanity, which is also reminding yourself that you're not the only person experiencing this. Because I think that's where so much of the shame comes from. And this is great for highly sensitive people, is to say that to say out loud, I'm not the only person experiencing this. There's a lot of people who get triggered by their dad. There's a lot of people who've had bad dads in their life who don't really pay attention to them. Just saying things like that, and then just saying, and because of that, it's okay that I feel angry right now. When you do those 3 things together, when you're softening with your breath and visualizing like a tension, what you're doing is you're actually hitting where the contraction is in your body. So it might be like you have a square in your jaw, or a triangle in your belly, or like a weird oval or a blob in your leg. It doesn't matter. You're soothing wherever that contraction is with your breath. So you're already taking the dysregulation out of your body because you're getting the contraction out. And then when you're soothing, it's saying, oh, I am here for myself. And so much of the nervous system work is actually training the pathways to know that you are here for yourself, that you are the last line of safety, which is hard because we're so used to it being other things, our parents and our friends, our love life, whatever it is, right? But it does develop over time where it's like, okay, I've got me. And it doesn't mean you're an island, but it means you have more safety and trust within yourself to make yourself feel okay. And then the allowing, which we've kind of covered. So those three things together are just so beautiful in the moment. And that's really just mindful self-compassion for dealing with big emotions. It's really simple. I really like to give people simple tools because I find it really hard to go do a 30-minute session of breath work on my own. I find it pretty tedious to go find a cold plunge and in the heat for an hour and then go get in cold water, you know? I know I keep using those two as example. They're both great modalities. Again, I'm not poo-pooing them. I love breath work. You know Erica. She's my favorite breath worker.
Yeah, she was on the podcast.
Oh, her breath work's phenomenal. I love her breath work.
It is phenomenal. Oh. And it's a lot. I agree with you that sometimes when you're really overwhelmed, especially when you have a busy schedule.
Yes.
Because we had a cold plunge in our garage for a while and now it's got boxes on top of it because we converted a freezer. And it's just that's one thing I've noticed is that sometimes some of these modalities are great, but they can just feel like one more thing I have to go do when you're already in overwhelm. It's like too much.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, so I'm in a state of overwhelm and I have all these things to do. So now I'm going to get undressed and put on my swimsuit and get my towel and tie up my hair and open the cold plunge and run the filter. And I don't want to do all that just to get out of overwhelm, right? I think you need these tools
It's
that
overwhelming.
are much more accessible. Otherwise, you just have more overwhelm.
Right.
The cold plunge is great sometimes, like you said. There are times when I've used it. Other times it's like, that's just another thing that's adding to my overwhelm, not subtracting from my overwhelm.
I think with these tools, it can also feel really overwhelming to just listen to this podcast, right? And just say, okay, so these are some of the tools. And then feel like you're in a sea of how do I regulate myself? And I have these 3 tools. But sometimes it's really good to be held, whether you're choosing to do mindful self-compassion work, whether you're choosing to do the work I'm doing, whether you even read. Kimberly Ann Johnson has a great book called The Call of the Jaguar, which is really layman's terms, wonderful. I teach some of the work that she does in that book in my courses sometimes. And it's a wonderful way to be held and understanding this work at a deeper level. But it is nice to be held sometimes when you're working on your nervous system by somebody else because it's really hard to produce safety for yourself without getting to fall back into something first to say like, hey, look, you're safe. Because I personally, even knowing this work, sometimes I'm overwhelmed when I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling so dysregulated and I need to do some practices. And I'm just like, sometimes I just want to be held instead of having to think of what practices to do. So I encourage you to also find people there's so many people teaching this work, you know, that are just doing it in a beautiful way. So also get support.
Yeah, coaches, therapists, mentors, you know, whatever works for you. Yeah, that's a principle that I learned too in my hypnosis training is that you can do self-hypnosis and self-hypnosis will only go so deep because it's like you have to be the hypnotherapist and the client at the same time.
Exactly.
So you have to keep the part of your brain on that would be doing hypnotherapy. And if you have someone else doing hypnotherapy for you, your brain will go into such deeper states of hypnosis, which is where deep healing happens as well. And deep regulation can happen as well because someone else is taking you there. So you can really let go into that place where you're in a more liminal state. You're not totally conscious. You're not asleep, but you're deep enough that you may not even remember, or maybe you remember consciously, but you don't have to think about what's happening. And so I think you're speaking to a very similar thing that at some point to have someone guide you to hold space for you is going to be so helpful because if you have to do both things at the same time, you know, if you have to regulate your own nerve, it's good to have the tools to do it on yourself because sometimes you're just in a state and you need to get out of that state.
Totally. Yeah.
And also for the deeper work, I absolutely agree with you to get support for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kari, the next question I'm going to ask you is the key question for this podcast. What is true love?
I really believe that true love is keeping your heart open. And I feel like that kind of covers all the bases for me when it comes to my husband, when it comes to my kids, when it comes to my friends. But I also think that keeping your heart open is a very courageous act. And it also requires a ton of boundary and a lot of discipline. And I think the nervous system work has really taught me this, that when we are not feeling safe within ourselves, it's very easy to guard and protect and perform. And we do that so much when we're dysregulated. And so I realized like one of the most courageous ways that I love and the ways that I've trained myself is to keep my heart open. Because I feel like when my heart is open, even if things are tough, even if I feel like someone's taking a shot at me, I really do my best to see the boundary outside of myself to grab that shot, but also that my heart gets to stay just in view of people and humanity. And this work has taught me so much about that. It's just like the human condition that we're all walking nervous systems. We're all feeling scared, troubled, nervous. There's a lot of little stressors that we're all dealing with as human beings to just survive, to be on this planet. And so I think the most love I've garnered has come from really being open to people's humanity. And that's just keeping my heart open to them. So I feel like that's the simplest way I could answer that question.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. You made it more
Thanks.
global, and that's okay, because I think true love exists in lots of different areas, even though this podcast is more focused on the romantic type of true love.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, in regards to my husband,
yeah,
definitely that has been the key. I think also with him, true love, I think sometimes is like just really wanting the other person to win. He always wants me to win, and I always want him to win. And it just produces this beautiful chemistry. We're always looking out for each other. And we're actually not even happy if the other person is not winning. And again, for me, it also always comes back to the same thing with the nervous system, because when you're in a conquering place where it's like, I need to feel safe by you being dominated or me being on top of this hierarchy with you, so I know that you're not having control over me. When we're in those loops, it really poisons the well, because if you really don't want that other person to win, then you're not living in true love. You're living in protection. And so that's what I mean about the open heart. The more we're protected, the less love actually can come through. And so that's the way it kind of shows up with my husband, is that dynamic, and we really just want each other to win.
Yeah. You talked before about safety maps. I think a lot of people don't realize, because you've talked about control as well. I think a lot of people, I know this is true for me, don't realize how many protective layers might be there that could be blocking the true love.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you talking about keeping your heart open, this work will do that. There's so much work that will do that. This work that you're talking about will do that. When you're in control mode, when you need to control your environment, this is especially true for highly sensitive people in dating. This is something, a pattern that I've seen, a pattern I've seen in myself, pattern I've seen in other HSPs as well. When it comes to dating and relationships, even if you have a desire for it, there's so much safety in controlling your own environment that it's actually very hard to let someone into your day-to-day life, or to let someone into an intimate space with you, whether that's a sexually intimate space, an emotionally intimate space, simply because of the control that you lose in that moment. Yeah. I don't know if this person's going to trigger me. I don't know if this person's going to, if they're coming over to my house every day. It could be something as simple as they make a mess in my house every day, and maybe it's not even a big mess, but it's just that it's a thing that wouldn't be there otherwise. Again, I'm going to use an example from my partner that came up recently. There's 2 bathrooms in this apartment, and I borrowed his shampoo and put it in the other shower and then didn't put it back. And 3 days later, he's like, please put the shampoo back. And it's because he had 3 days worth of taking a shower in his shower and realizing his shampoo had moved.
That would drive me crazy too. I don't blame him.
I know. No, I was like, I get it, dude. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful. But it was funny to me because I saw I'm not used to having someone move my shampoo, little bit of stress that it created. And that is a very stereotypical HSP thing, is just that little bit of loss of control over the environment can really create enough of a cycle that some people very unconsciously make these decisions to keep love over here.
Yeah.
To keep it at bay, to keep it away. They want it, but they don't really want it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's courageous to be messy. I mean, it's really courageous. I mean, I remember when I met my husband, there's no way you're as good as you appear. What's wrong with you? There's got to be something. And I love his reply. He just said, let me show you, which was so sweet, because he really is a man of action. He doesn't just say things, he does them. He shows you, or he shows me. But, there was those moments where I was like, oh my God, he's going to see my crazy. He's going to see the things I'm OCD about. He's going to see, and that's where all the intimacy lives. But it does take, our social nervous system is constantly tracking. Am I Am I going to like be ousted from the tribe? Am I going to not be this person's person? Am I going to lose this identity, this part of me that was really loving, being loved by this person? And there is a primal part of us that says, I don't want to lose that partnership, that connection, that thing that is helping me feel really safe. And so when we can really lean more on knowing that we have our own back and that we can find our ways to get out of the anxiety and not depend on the environment informing that, it can be really huge. It can be really, and I think that's the courageousness. It's one of my favorite things that Kimberly Ann Johnson, again, one of the people I love, she writes on her emails, have courage. And I write with heart, so for me, it's those two things. It's like courage and your heart. Like, that's why we do this work. That's why we actually care about safety, because we can't walk courageously forward and be a regulated predator like a lion or a tiger in the world in a good way, right? We think of predator and we get so scared and we hate the word. And of course, the word has all bad connotations, but a regulated predator is actually a really powerful, beautiful place to be. We don't want to be prey and we don't want to be a dysregulated predator who's wreaking havoc on the world. But we want to have some sense of that resilience and that strength within ourselves to be courageous enough to take risks, to be courageous enough to follow love. These things take a lot of courage. And if we're not paying attention to the signals, the stress signals we grew up with, if our parents were alcoholics or we dated the wrong person when we were younger or whatever it is that are still talking to us and haven't been answered, it's going to color how courageous we are. It's going to color how safe we feel opening our heart. For me, that's why this work is the bottom line, the last stop to really making lasting transformation,
Yeah. Any last words of wisdom and resources for us?
Well, last words of wisdom, that's a tough one. I'll think about that. I'll start with resources, which is, as I mentioned earlier, just having the support. I did actually have this big inspiration once my mentor passed away to make this course that was based on the nervous system reset, which is sort of a live course that I did. But I just really feel the things we're talking about, we haven't even skimmed the surface on, how safety maps are built and what your baseline of safety is and how you understand it. I actually created a course talking about all of those things and teaching somatic practices and teaching about state, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And it's honestly a beautiful, incredibly valuable, incredibly informative course. And it's 2 parts. And I wanted to make it incredibly affordable too, so that people could access this and not have to do like 7 months of coaching, but they could have this really beautiful understanding of, okay, awesome. Now I have an understanding of how to start approaching my nervous system. And I have this competency. And you'll really get that from this. And it's only $366, which it's 2 different courses. So there's a lot of value there. And it's available on my Instagram. If you go into my link tree, it's just ready, live, and there for you. So I highly recommend that if this is something that was resonating with you or you're starting to understand the importance of this, that resource is just there for you. And then also, if you join my newsletter, also on my Instagram link tree, there's a lot of master classes I do. I'm about to do one. It's the nervous system of the overgiver. Sometimes I do the nervous system and money, things that are like everyday things we're really grappling with, and they're free. So make sure you get those resources, because I create them for people because I'm so passionate about this work. I really want people to actually feel supported in this and not feel like they have to be making 6 figures to have this information, which I think is everyone's birthright. So I want to share that much. I'm at Kari Azuma on Instagram.
I'm going to put all these links in the show notes as well. So definitely check those out.
Awesome. Yes. And yeah, just the final wisdom. The nervous system is a conversation. It's a relationship. And it's a relationship with your body too. And a lot of people are very resistant, I find. It's honestly a marketing nightmare to explain what I do. Because when I put things up around the body, people are just like, I don't want to read it. We want to be met through our minds. And usually when I'm working with clients, I meet them with their mind first because I have to. That's how they know the inlet. But our, mind and body it's so important to understand that that's a part of this work. So I really encourage people to build a competency around understanding the difference in the nervous system work that's out there. There's acute, which is doing the things that give you instant regulation. Those are great. And there's the deeper things that you can touch when it comes to really going into your nervous system to understand, how did I start out understanding safety? And that's what I'm up to. And I think it's great to continue to find people who are kind of going into that deeper level, because what I have found with my clients is that when they're complete with their coaching, they're not signing up for a bunch more programs, right? They feel like they can take the reins of their growth and they have the authority. They're not outsourcing their authority as much. That doesn't mean they can't do programs or retreats or come back for mastery, right? But once you actually learn how to develop this dialogue, it is one of the most powerful skill sets I think imaginable, which is why I want to get it out there to everyone possible, because I feel like when we start empowering women, especially men too, but I'm really focused with women on being able to be more powerful leaders because they actually have a body that can hold that leadership, we are just going to be able to change the world. There's so much that's possible. There's so many women who are filled with gifts right now that are just not feeling safe enough to deliver them, or don't know how, or they're scared, or they're frozen. And this is really the pathway through, in my opinion. So I'm going to say that much because I'm a Scorpio and I have to talk passionately about what I love.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. And I love this
Yeah.
conversation. And check out Kari's work because it is the deep, deep work that we all can benefit from.
Thank you, Liz.
You're just right